On a hot July night in 64 AD, as flames tore through the wooden heart of Rome, people whispered a name into the smoke. They said the emperor was watching. They said he was singing. They said Nero had finally become what everyone feared. But long before the fire, long before the screams, the real story had already begun in a palace where love meant power and family meant danger. This is the story of Nero the emperor, who murdered his own mother, turned executions into theater, and became a symbol of cruelty for 2,000 years. And to understand the monster, we have to begin with the child. Nero entered the world on December 15th, 37 AD, born as Lucius Domitius Hanobarbus. He was not born an emperor. He was born into a dynasty where survival depended on ambition. His mother, Agrippina the Younger, was one of the most formidable women in Roman history. She was the sister of Emperor Caligula, the daughter of the beloved general Germanicus, and a woman who understood power like a weapon. His father, Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus, died when Nero was only 3. That left him alone with Agrippina, and Agrippina did not believe in ordinary destinies. She believed her son would rule, but in Rome thrones were not inherited peacefully. They were taken. Agrippina had already been exiled once under her brother Caligula. She had survived scandal, humiliation, and political exile. When Caligula was assassinated and her uncle Claudius became emperor, she returned more careful, more calculating, and then she did something extraordinary. She married him. Yes, she married her own uncle, Emperor Claudius. Not for love, for the throne. Agrippina understood something fundamental about Rome. Bloodlines could be rewritten. Claudius had a biological son, Britannicus, but Agrippina maneuvered carefully. In 50 AD, Claudius adopted Nero, placing him ahead of Britannicus in the line of succession. At just 13 years old, Nero became the heir to the Roman Empire. Behind the scenes, Agrippina removed obstacles quietly. Rivals disappeared, political enemies fell from favor, and in 54 AD, Claudius suddenly died after a banquet, allegedly from poisoned mushrooms. The official explanation was illness. But Rome had seen enough palace deaths to recognize the pattern. At 16, Nero became emperor, and for a brief moment, Rome exhaled. In his early years, Nero did not appear monstrous. Guided by the philosopher Seneca the Younger and the Praetorian prefect Burrus, Nero promised moderation. He lowered taxes, he respected the Senate, he spoke of justice. People dared to hope. But beneath the calm surface, tension was growing. Agrippina had not engineered this empire to step aside. She expected to rule through her son. Nero, however, had tasted authority, and he did not intend to share it. There was still one shadow in the palace, Britannicus, Claudius's biological son. He was younger, but he was a threat. In 55 AD, during a dinner attended by the imperial court, Britannicus was served wine. It had been tasted for poison, as all imperial food was. He complained it was too hot. Cold water was added. Moments later, the boy collapsed. Convulsions, foam at the mouth, silence. Nero calmly told the guests it was an epileptic seizure. Dinner continued. Britannicus was dead. With that single act, Nero crossed a line. He was no longer the hopeful young ruler guided by philosophers. He had learned the simplest truth of imperial power: eliminate rivals. And the next rival was far more dangerous. His own mother. Agrippina had raised Nero to rule, but she had not raised him to defy her. Their relationship deteriorated quickly. She criticized his affairs. She resented his independence. She reminded him often that she had made him emperor. To Nero, that sounded like a threat. In 59 AD, he decided she had to die. But Nero did not think like an assassin. He thought like a performer. Instead of poison or a blade, Nero devised something theatrical: a collapsible boat. He invited Agrippina to a festival at Baiae. They reconciled publicly. They dined warmly. Then she boarded a specially constructed vessel meant to collapse mid-journey and sink her quietly into the sea. The mechanism failed. The boat partially broke apart, but Agrippina survived. She swam to shore. When Nero heard she was alive, panic replaced artistry. This time he sent soldiers. When they arrived at her villa, Agrippina reportedly bared her body and told them to strike her womb first, the womb that had carried the monster. She was killed. Nero had committed matricide. Even Rome, hardened by violence, recoiled. With his mother gone, Nero changed. He began performing publicly, singing, acting, racing chariots. For a Roman emperor, this was scandalous. Emperors were generals and lawgivers, not entertainers. But Nero believed he was an artist. He forced senators to attend his performances. Applause was mandatory. Leaving early was forbidden. Power had become theater, and theater required spectacle. Nero had married Octavia, Claudius's daughter, for political stability. He found her dull. He fell in love with Poppaea Sabina. Octavia was accused of adultery, almost certainly falsely, and executed in 62 AD. The Roman public mourned her. Nero ignored them. He married Poppaea. 3 years later, during an argument while she was pregnant, Nero allegedly kicked her in the abdomen. She died. Whether the story is fully true or shaped by hostile historians, what mattered was perception. Rome believed their emperor had killed another wife. The pattern was undeniable. Family members did not survive close proximity to Nero. Then came July 18th, 64 AD. A fire began near the Circus Maximus. It spread rapidly. For 6 days and 7 nights, Rome burned. 10 of 14 districts were damaged or destroyed. Thousands were homeless. The rumor spread like flame itself. Nero had ordered it. The famous image Nero fiddling while Rome burned is technically inaccurate. The violin did not yet exist, and Nero was reportedly outside the city when the fire began. But legends survive for a reason. Nero did use the cleared land to build his massive palace complex, the Domus Aurea, the Golden House. It sprawled across central Rome with artificial lakes and gilded halls. While citizens rebuilt their homes, Nero built himself paradise. And when anger grew, he needed someone to blame. A small religious sect, Christians, became the scapegoats. Nero accused them of starting the fire. Executions followed. Some were crucified. Others were torn apart by animals. Some were covered in pitch and burned alive to illuminate imperial gardens at night. Whether exaggerated or not, the cruelty left a permanent scar on history. The emperor who once sought applause was now feared as a sadist. By 65 AD, opposition hardened. The Personnian conspiracy, a plot by senators and military officers, aimed to assassinate Nero. It failed. The aftermath was brutal. Executions multiplied. Torture became common. Even Seneca, his former tutor, was ordered to commit suicide. The philosopher who once guided the boy watched his student become unrecognizable. Rome no longer whispered. It feared. In 68 AD, revolts erupted in the provinces. Governors withdrew support. The Senate declared Nero a public enemy. Abandoned by the Praetorian Guard, the emperor fled Rome. For the first time in his life, Nero faced something he could not control. He reportedly paced in panic, asking, "What an artist dies in me." Not emperor, not ruler, artist. When soldiers approached to arrest him, Nero took his own life with assistance from a servant. He was 30 years old, the last emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. So who was Nero? A madman, a victim of palace corruption, a ruler shaped by a mother who taught him that power required elimination. History, especially Roman history, is written by enemies and survivors. Ancient historians like Tacitus and Suetonius despised him, and much of what we know comes from hostile sources. But certain truths remain undeniable. He killed Britannicus. He killed Agrippina. He ordered executions with indifference. He ruled through spectacle and fear. And when Rome burned, whether by accident or design, he rebuilt it in his own image. Nero became a symbol not merely of cruelty, but of what happens when absolute power merges with insecurity, ego, and theatrical obsession. He did not begin as a monster. He became one step by step, a child raised in poison, a son who killed his mother, an emperor who preferred applause to responsibility, and in the end, a ruler abandoned by everyone, dying not as a god, not as a tyrant, but as a frightened man mourning the loss of his imagined greatness. Rome survived him. Empires often survive their worst rulers, but Nero's name never recovered. 2,000 years later, when cities burn and leaders fail, people still invoke him, because Nero is no longer just a man. He is a warning. If you want more stories of history's darkest rulers and shocking secrets, hit subscribe and join us. Don't miss the next tale that will leave you speechless.